Welcome to the Thrive in Fashion podcast, where we explore the role of the fashion buyer, the knowledge and skill sets required for success, and the impact of the role in your retail business. In each episode, you will learn about industry best practice and how the buyer's role is evolving in this ever-changing, fast-paced industry. And now, here is your host, a fashion industry expert with over 20 years of experience, Elisabeth Mac Hale.
Welcome to this episode of the Thrive in Fashion podcast. I am your host, Elisabeth Mac Hale, and in this episode, I want to talk about pricing strategies and, in particular, costings that every fashion buyer should understand. Whether you're working in a large or small retail business, knowing how to navigate costs effectively can make or break a successful season or your success in the industry. First, let's talk about costing and why it's important. Costing is about understanding how much it costs to produce a product and how to price it appropriately for retail. For large retail businesses, developing private label products, buyers will deal directly with manufacturers. This means they have to have a clear understanding of the various costs involved to get their products to the shop floor. As buyers, we can develop great products, but unless it's priced to sell at a profit, the outcome is not a positive one for the business. Developing a solid pricing strategy and having a comprehensive understanding of the various components is critical in a large or even a small retail business. When you understand the pricing components, as a buyer, you can then achieve the profit targets. Understanding how to price a product will drive the success of your business, whether you are buying directly or wholesale. And the relationship with the retail price and margin are fundamental for market growth. Price is your profitability indicator, and it's measured by gross margin. The difference between how much we pay for an item and how much we sell it for is gross margin. You may also be familiar with the term markup. This is another way of measuring the difference between the cost and selling price. They are both profitability measurements, but the important thing is stay consistent whichever one you are using. The cost price is the total amount of your product and everything that has gone into that product, which includes fabrics, trims, packaging, sewing and labour to make that product. A buyer's strategy is usually to source the best quality products for the price classification and negotiate the lowest price. When buying FOB, the shipping or transportation of the goods is the responsibility of the buyer, but this is also factored into the total cost component. The cost is the single most important variable that sets the overall price positioning for your product. It's the first component that, as development buyers, you can control from the beginning when you are planning and sourcing your styles. The cost of a product can vary, obviously, depending on the materials, the trims, packaging and labour, country of origin, and the shipping. Sourcing is one of the main challenges that will impact your profit planning when looking at your different pricing strategies. It's up to you as a buyer to ensure that you are sourcing the right products and quality for your market niche, one that fits in with your price point structure. If the cost of goods is coming out higher than anticipated, there are a few options to consider. Normally, buyers will cross-cost with other suppliers to compare the prices. Alternatively, you can find new supply sources to fit or accommodate your budget or price constraints. Alternatively, you can find new supply sources to fit or accommodate the budget or price constraints that you are working within. You can also review the product styles and materials and choose to modify these into your costs. But it's important to note when you are cross-costing or obtaining different quotes from different manufacturers that the information that you share with each is exactly the same so that you can make comparable costings. All costs can be negotiated, so it's important to discuss these before moving your orders to new and untried suppliers. Negotiating the cost is typically tied to meeting minimum quantity requirements. The more units that you place an order for, obviously the better, and it's more advantageous with potential to negotiate a better price. While smaller businesses or independent boutiques might not have the same volume as large retailers, everyone can negotiate directly with suppliers. Focus on building strong relationships to negotiate better pricing based on loyalty or consistent orders, perhaps. It's about creating a partnership where both parties ultimately benefit. The main components of the buyer's costings are cost price and the add-ons or landed cost price, from which you then calculate your gross margin from your selling price. COGS is the acronym for cost of goods sold, which you will come across time and again, and this basically includes the direct costs tied to production, like materials, labour and overheads. The landed cost price includes the business overhead costs. Normally, this will be a fixed percentage. It's a critical term to understand when importing your goods. Normally, this will be a fixed percentage, particularly if you're working in a business where you are buying goods or buying on terms using FOB, freight on board. It's a critical term to understand when you're importing goods. FOB pricing indicates whether the seller or buyer is responsible for the shipping costs. For instance, when you're buying goods on an FOB shipping basis, you take ownership as soon as the items leave the manufacturer or handed over. This means that then you're responsible for those shipping costs, insurance, customs duties from that point forward until it reaches your warehouse. And this is included in that percentage cost or that percentage that you add on to the primary cost of your product. Let's look at the difference between wholesale buying and retail selling and how pricing strategies also play a key role here. When purchasing wholesale, it's essential to calculate the markup correctly. A standard retail markup can range from 2.5 to 3.5 times the wholesale price, depending on the product category. So for example, if you purchase a dress at $50 wholesale, applying a 2.2 markup means that you sell it at $110 retail. Remember, your markup may differ from other businesses. The markup when converted into dollars needs to cover all of your overhead costs and expenses. But this isn't just about math. As a buyer, you also need to consider the market demand, the competition, your target customer's willingness to pay. And if you have access to data analytics, this will help you to analyze your customers' buying patterns, and you may wish to adjust your pricing strategies accordingly. Once you have a confirmed pricing strategy, you now need to ensure it's communicated to your customers. For large businesses, marketing teams often help shaping the narrative around pricing. Buyers should ensure their pricing strategy aligns with the brand, business image, and values. For instance, a brand positioning itself as a high-end designer brand will follow a higher pricing strategy to reflect the products and the brand DNA. On the other hand, a small boutique owner can communicate directly to the customers in their shop. For example, when a customer asks why a product is priced higher, the owner can share the story of the artisan who made it, the materials used, and the impact of supporting local businesses. When it comes to understanding the gross profit margin versus the net profit margin, I will explain some of the formulas that apply to these metrics. Margin is the difference between your selling price and your cost price, and the formula for gross margin is the selling price minus the cost price divided by the selling price. To express it as a percentage, multiply it by 100. So for example, if you have a selling price for an item of $60 and the cost for that item was $40, applying the formula 60 minus 40 divided by 60 and multiplied by 100, because we want to express it as a percentage, will give you 33.3% gross margin. So what is the difference between gross and net margin? Many people often discuss gross profit margin but overlook the net profit margin. Here's why that happens. The gross profit margin is a metric that compares the revenue you've generated against the cost of goods sold, COGS. It's typically a positive figure and reflects how well your business is doing in generating sales over costs. The net profit margin, on the other hand, is the figure that shows what's left over after deducting not just the cost of goods sold, but also the marketing and labour costs and overheads and expenses of the business. These expenses can accumulate, and significantly impact your bottom line. It's okay if you are unsure of the difference. You're not the only one. Richard Branson tells a story of when he was in his 50s, he was in a board meeting, being taken through some financial figures, when the subject of net and gross margin came up. He admits that he was quite confused and didn't know if the results were good or bad news, as he couldn't tell the difference between net and gross margin. One of his team kindly took him aside after he admitted his mistake and showed him a simple way to understand it. He coloured a piece of paper blue, indicating the ocean, and put a net in the ocean with fish in it. He then explained that the fish in the net were the net profits, and the rest of the ocean was the gross turnover. Branson then realised that he was much poorer than he thought, as he always thought it was the other way around. While gross profit margin is exciting to discuss, it's crucial to account for all of the expenses in the business, and what remains in your net is truly what matters. The last thing I will add is the importance of regularly reviewing your pricing strategy and costs. Market conditions, trends, and costs can fluctuate. As a fashion buyer, it's essential to keep on top of any of these changes to ensure that you are maintaining healthy margins. For large retailers, this might involve quarterly reviews where the buying team assess the performance of products against projected costs and sales. Or from experience, it can be due to a currency fluctuation that can have a big impact on their margins once the goods arrive. All retail businesses, large and small, benefit from doing monthly reviews to assess inventory turnover and sales results. By staying proactive, you can make much more informed decisions about markdowns, sales promotions, and future ordering, ensuring that you maintain profitability. Understanding pricing strategies and costings is a crucial part of buying for both large retail businesses and small boutique owners. Whether it's negotiating costs with manufacturers, understanding FOB deliveries, or developing a pricing strategy that aligns with your brand, these factors can significantly impact your success in fashion buying. That's all for this week. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show. For more of Elisabeth's industry tips and to learn more about how you can develop your buying skills, visit thriveinfashion.com. There you can find show notes for this episode and every episode. Also, register for the Thrive in Fashion program and sign up for weekly news delivered straight to your inbox. Until next time.